Oof. Can I tell you something? So, this is one of those messages that I'm not 100% sure how it's going to unfold, to be quite transparent. And it's a topic of discussion that, I don't want to do, but I feel I'm being summoned to do because it's within that discomfort that we find relief on the other side of, I'm hearing this portal of discovery. It's something in which we are remembering as we navigate this construct. And this came through from a very, let's say, intense astral travel message. I was seeing a lot of themes that had occurred throughout many parallels, many lifetimes, and it was essentially a solar plexus portal. When we speak about the solar plexus, it's not just a portal to do with emotions. It's actually much more than that. It's about power, perception, and the subconscious agreements that we hold within our being that then go out into this holographic construct and seek people, archetypes, energetic exchanges, and lessons that we will essentially witness, organize within our reality. Because, why? They're in resonance with what it is that we hold within ourselves. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into the subconscious. And I'm seeing it as the subconscious parts that is operating beneath the human's awareness that essentially governs not only what we experience, what we attract, what it is that we'll tolerate, and what we believe that we deserve as we navigate this realm and the energetic exchanges and signatures. And I'm hearing the quality of those exchanges and the value of the lessons that we have collected across lifetimes. But what happens when we begin to heal this core wound within the ancestral lineage and within ourself? I'm hearing it's an octave of consciousness. It's a wound that we are hosting within ourselves that has come from all those who have come before us that are seeking resolution. It's wounds that are seeking resolution. And what happens when you restore these wounds back into wholeness? These experiences begin to disintegrate. I'm seeing they begin to dissolve because you're no longer in resonance with them. You have transcended that very octave of reality. It feels like you've transcended beyond a dimensional layer of this reality. And within that dimensional layer, there's an ecosystem filled with people and lessons and themes and archetypal roles that we take on that dictate the way that we'll experience our life on Earth, essentially. When we dive into the portal of the solar plexus, what we find is a question that we're all being invited to ask ourselves deeply when it comes to our exchange within this material plane. And that is, what is worth our life force? This is something that we must deeply integrate. And I'm seeing something to do with dynamic exchanges, energetic exchanges that have run through the lineage for eons. And there are subconscious agreements, contractual agreements that have played out across lifetimes that are lingering in your field within this present incarnation. So the question becomes, what archetype have we been unconsciously playing? What strong archetype actually exists as a core lesson throughout our lineage? Can we begin to reflect and recover the information behind that role that we've been playing that then leads to a mirror of our reality, reinforcing that role to us? Who we've been in order to get here is no longer who we have to be moving forward. That archetype that was created or manifested through this survival programming is something that you are here to deprogram. And I'm just seeing something that has become like crystalline, like this mineral of citrine, which may be an element that you want to be able to work with because it is a solar plexus ruler, just begin to dissolve and become fluid once again. So it could be crystalline thought forms, right? Thought forms reinforce ways of thinking and feeling about your experience on Earth that then become a bioelectrical charge, and they create these crystalline structures that then mold into solid belief systems. And I'm seeing these are belief systems that you are dissolving, you are transforming the way that you're relating to your life experiences on earth, changing the way that you're thinking and feeling about them, expanding into this wider, broader, universal truth that is helping your ancestral lineage to see an alternative way of looking at the same experience. And I'm hearing becoming more empowered by them instead of feeling disempowered as they embarked on their journeys throughout this dimension. I'm hearing helping them transform their relationship to the material plane. All right, this is one of these messages that I have so much that has accumulated throughout this past week that we're just gonna sit here together and it's gonna be a real deep free flow session. The first, let's say, portal of discovery that was coming through was open centers. Spirit kept saying to me, like, the open centers, which really links strongly to the human design. So there could be something around how your avatar, right, the carbon-based life form in which your soul is seated in, is structured, is actually designed. And there could be some type of open center that you can master, that you are mastering in this lifetime. And the thing is, once you master these open centers, over time, it allows you to cultivate these incredible skills when it comes to reading the emotional undercurrents of a room or of a person. I'm seeing into the depths of the psyche, seeing a dimensional layer of this reality that lies beneath ordinary perception. So you're essentially this emotional, energetic tuning fork. It's like you're able to read your environment. If you don't know about open centers, I'll go ahead and just give a quick explanation for this. Human design may be something that you want to look into, but essentially when you have an open center, you're most sensitive to either the people around you or your environment. So you tend to absorb or amplify and experience that energy more fluidly than somebody who has a defined center. You can think about it as a defined center is you having your own radio station where you're just broadcasting consistently. Whereas when a human has an open center, they have this radio receiver that's picking up multiple stations of what's happening in the field around them and within the inner worlds of the humans. I'm hearing the souls playing within these human costumes. So that creates obviously both a gift and a challenge within this lifetime. Some more examples of this would be when you have an open emotional center, then you'll feel other people's emotions very intensely. If you have an open root, then you could feel this pressure to hurry or get things done. If you have an open heart or ego, then you'll feel the need to constantly prove yourself to the external world or matrix. And if you have an open G center, then you can find yourself searching for your identity or love or direction through others. Many of our biggest challenges and really lessons in life are going to be through these open centers because it can be where we attach or create an identity around something that never actually belonged to us, but instead we were picking up from the field around us. And something that came through in my meditation was the data behind that sensation that was arising, that emotion that was arising, which really are just informers. And we noticed that when this database of memories or the Akashic field or library begins to open up and we begin accessing or retrieving times and space, or these spaces and time, right? Almost like time slots, we are able to see how we've been experiencing this our whole life, even from a child, especially as a child. So one memory that surfaced for me was this time that I won an award. And I spoke about this quite a few times on the channel, actually, where there was this drawing award and we were just drawing and I was doing it for fun. Yet I was also envisioning myself, right, through my third eye. I was seeing the timeline of where I was actually winning the award for doing this, but there wasn't that expectation. It was just something that I was entertaining at the time. Yeah, I didn't realize the power of visualizing that reality. I didn't realize that that would actually come to fruition. So in deep hypnosis, I was shown this memory of where I was receiving an award for one of my drawings. And at the time, I remember feeling really self-conscious and questioning whether I deserved the recognition for simply just doing something that I loved. And as I sat in that moment as a child, it became really clear that I wasn't only experiencing my own emotions in that moment of unworthiness, but I was actually picking up on the wider emotional atmosphere that was surrounding the whole experience. There was the fear of judgment in the room around me. There was the concern around perception and the discomfort around stepping outside of what society or everyone else expected me to do. The lesson wasn't to just shut out or close out or suppress those feelings, but the lesson was in discernment, cultivating this finely tuned instrument that allows us to not just read what's happening within our own emotional world, but read what's happening within the emotional world or field of our fellow humans. So I was recognizing that what I was picking up on and what I was feeling running through my body was something that I was absorbing from one of my teachers at the time, who had a fear of judgment around how she was going to be perceived if her student wasn't super happy and ecstatic to go out into the whole entire school and assembly to claim this reward without boundaries. The whole lesson is that we can begin creating an identity or an emotion or a fear within expectations that were projected upon us. And it was never really ours to carry in the first place. I felt really judged later on that day when my teacher had said, "Hey, why didn't you smile and, say thank you to the artist?" I couldn't even get any words out. I didn't even want to get up. When they called my name, I just stayed there and I was like, maybe if I don't look at them, they're not gonna, I was just completely so shy. So I feel many people are being asked to actually discern the difference between what they are genuinely feeling and what they may be simply sensing in the field around them. I was just simply picking up on the self-judgment and the internal war that was happening within my teacher because she had a fear of how she was going to be perceived either by the other teacher or the students or the author herself for the book that I was drawing for. So that was just a teaching that I was seeing. It was an experience that maybe some of you will resonate with. Another thing that was coming through is that when we tune into these portals, they open up into holographic constructs. And so within these ecosystems, there are also certain archetypes that reside and live in those realms. One of the archetypes or entities that I was working with was Black Moon Lilith. If you don't know about Black Moon Lilith, I actually did a whole topic on her, a whole teaching, so I'll link that down below. But what came up strongly was the theme that she has around shame. She was taught that she should be disempowered and that she's supposed to doubt her own divinity and doubt her intuition. And it was from the emotion of confusion. And what I was shown was beneath that confusion, which is like the tertiary emotion, we unveil this secondary emotion, which is this deep anger that many of our fellow humans and even ourselves with collective injustices still hold within our organism. However, when we peel back that anger, what I found was this deep shame. There was actually this deep fear that is still existing and present within many of us in this system. And that emotion is energy emotion. So it seeks out an expression. And if it's not alchemized, if the human doesn't know how to actually process that emotion and recover the data behind it, then it can become externalized through blame, right? This is where people project their resentment that they're holding or harboring within their heart, and they begin to resent you. This is when we see internal conflicts begin to project into external conflicts, and exaggerated emotional reactions can occur within the being because there's this call for attention where there is this wound or trigger that's being re-expressed. And so we'll start to see power struggles that will happen because the being or the human is feeling very powerless when they are disconnected from their own divinity. Essentially leads to a path that's incredibly self-destructive. When we fall into decoherence, we can forget our purpose, we can fall out of alignment with harmonic order. But anything that's fallen into decoherence can also restore electrical communication with the source and come back into coherence. So it's understanding that the soul is always experiencing what's in benefit for it at that stage of its evolution, even if it is falling into the more dense layers of reality, let's say this. Because even within those dense layers, no matter if it's high vibrational or low vibrational, that doesn't equate to the value of the lessons hidden inside of the experience. So the soul is always recovering what's in favor for them. They're always recovering what energy and elements that they want to be able to work with, even if that is the more subconscious layers. However, you do not need to entangle yourself with what they may be currently moving through. And that again creates the boundary, which is also a solar plexus energy of what is worth your life force and what energetic exchanges may no longer feel in alignment with you. If this is something that you've already moved through, then you can simply recognize and hold space for the being that is moving through this process. And you don't have to carry what they're carrying, because again, it doesn't belong to you. We even have 444 on the clock right now, which is all about a protection energy and your awareness of what's happening within your own emotional world, and also the emotional worlds and the inner hidden realms of those around you is the only protection you need. Just becoming aware of that and being anchored in that awareness. And that awareness is often just through quiet, neutral observation. And that's where the lens of discernment really comes in. Now, on a bigger scale, the solar plexus is also a portal that allows the frequency, because emotions are frequencies, of anger to move through it, right? The solar plexus is responsible for processing this anger, especially collective anger that we hold within the field. A lot of this is from generational pain and emotional patterns that humanity has been evolving through for many generations, literally for eons. And many of these frequencies are surfacing because they're ready to be witnessed within our life experience. And that is something that we are all beginning to lean into, and we're no longer resisting or avoiding, because the more that we avoid this deep collective injustice that many of us feel has occurred upon this planet, let's say this, we're unable to actually access the mass amounts of data or the information, or again, the lesson in how we can become more empowered from these experiences and begin to refine our character and refine ourselves as a collective from these experiences, instead of allowing them to define us and simply holding the archetype as a victim, or projecting archetype onto another being, or bigger institutions, or let's say bigger systems within this matrix as the perpetrators. And that's a huge theme. Some of you are really going to pick up what I'm putting down there. So if you do, I rock with you. If you're still processing it, it will reach you when it needs to, okay? And your body holds on to this information. Your body remembers what the mind may have not even lived within this lifetime. And so it can be emotions that literally have been stored within every carbon-based life form. It's been stored within the morphic genetic field, which is the instruction manual of how our avatar, I'm hearing, is curated for this experience to... I'm seeing it be curated or designed or simulated in such a way to assist in the pain that we've carried across lifetimes, and to finally alchemize or alleviate that pain. I'm hearing as you're doing it within this body, you're also doing it within these quantum non-local connections that are all entangled. You're entangled with every lifetime. And it's so important because every time we're holding these dense emotions within our body, this energy that's seeking to be transformed as a transduction system, that's you transforming a lower energy state into a higher energy state, which is simply saying, okay, I feel about this experience this way, and it's not super productive or supportive for growth and evolution. It's something that's just causing me further pain and suffering, into, okay, let's transcend the character, let's transcend the stories that played out, and let's begin to recover the wisdom within the experience. Again, how can I become more refined rather than creating an identity and becoming defined by this experience? And that's your multidimensionality. It's your ability to hold multiple perspectives and multiple ways of feeling about one situation, about one circumstance. And when we are holding these, unprocessed emotions, it becomes increasingly difficult to actually tap into or tune into things like gratitude, things like compassion or clarity or peace. And we'll notice that peace emerges in our life experience through this introspection, through I'm hearing moving directly through the most uncomfortable scenes in your life and revisiting them, but being able to see them from the healed self rather than the wounded self. It helps you see your life experiences from that higher octave that can transcend the experience itself. And that is where your liberation lies. And when I speak about gratitude, I'm not speaking about the superficial layers of gratitude when it comes to the energetic exchanges that we have with other beings in this realm. It's far deeper than that. True gratitude and the true cultivation of this vibration is to be seated in the remembrance of who you truly are. It's to be seated in the stillness, to be able to observe and actually admire the complexities and intricacies of this very dimension and everything that surrounds us in this dimension within the very system or construct that we're immersed in, and being able to see it through the cosmic lens, because that's when we come into coherence, and it's through that coherence that you actually become extremely magnetic. Gratitude is something that essentially shifts your whole entire multidimensional architecture, where you end up becoming like your Taurus field just you start elevating into a higher vibration, which then needs to the quality of exchanges within this realm beginning to reflect your internal state of being. That opens up your ability to attract in people and experiences and opportunities and relationships that are all in resonance with what your soul is able to pull forth from this holographic construct and translate into a tangible experience when you're seated in this coherence. You're able to pull in what is aligned, and I'm hearing extremely conducive and extremely supportive and productive for your soul's journey. And it's because you're this being that holds the full spectrum of human emotion. And what is emotion? It's vibration. Vibration also translates into light. Reality is simply undifferentiated bandwidths of frequency light. We have lower vibrational emotions like anger and grief and pain and sorrow and suffering and disconnection from our power. And then we begin to go up the spectrum into things like compassion and acceptance, and then we'll transcend into unity consciousness and peace and harmonic order that's able to be restored within a being. And so some people are operating within only a very small portion of that spectrum, but in order to access higher octaves of yourself, it requires you to access this full range of emotion, to not only feel joy or gratitude, but also grief, to not only feel anger, fear, and shame, but also elevate into states like compassion and love and acceptance. But when we resist feeling these heavy, lower emotions, we create blockages within these systems. What happens when we do not process these emotions is essentially the human body holds on to these patterns of energy, of frequency, of vibrations, and it causes a lot of complications within our vessel simply because the sensation was designed to be temporal. When we don't know how to process that sensation, when we don't know how to filter that frequency, I'm seeing you are this natural filtration system, much like an oyster that can, accept a parasite as part of its evolutionary path, where it can turn a leaden experience into something that's extremely valuable. You're able to do the same thing when it comes to your life experiences in this realm. It ends up impacting not just our physical body, but also our emotional body and the energetic, etheric, and ancestral realms. That then starts informing the morphic field. It literally starts informing the holographic construct that we're designed we are designed from. And so the morphic field starts writing this down around, so-and-so is feeling deep anger. And that is the very field in which our reality renders from. You can think about it like this. It's almost like, so-and-so is feeling anger. And so the morphic field is like, bet so-and-so's feeling anger. We're going to keep reinforcing your subconscious core belief systems or internal state of being in the world around you. We're just going to give you more to be angry about. So unless we know how to process this, you literally are a magnet, right? So you're always attracting what is in resonance with your internal state of being. If you hold deep, belief systems of being disempowered or being the victim, well, reality is just going to keep reinforcing situations for you to victimize yourself or become disempowered by until you decide to become more empowered by the experience. You have to remember that you're literally a fractal of the earth herself. And if we think about the earth as this conscious organism, she's constantly processing vast ranges of frequencies beyond what you can physically perceive. And your body is literally doing the same thing. It's processing these frequencies, these experiences in your journey on this planet, and the information beyond conscious awareness. So to bring the earth back into greater harmony, we must first learn to bring our body as an extension of her back into harmony as well. To bring order to the collective field, we must begin by creating order within our own sovereign fields. Because as we move through these powerful collective cycles, these strong emotions will be arising, not just within the field, but also within our being. We may feel along our space-time travels deep anger, deep overwhelm as we move through the system. We can feel fear or frustration, but the invitation is not to become a victim to those emotions, which we find so many of us doing. The invitation is to simply become conscious of them, to begin to witness what is surfacing within the field and start neutrally observing it, to recognize the archetypal aspect of yourself that's being brought to the surface for integration, for healing. And these planetary movements I'm seeing can actually invoke, and that invocation is almost like it summons things within us. It summons us to address energy that has been lingering within the field, memories that have been stored within this holographic construct that is still seeking resolution. So it's like we don't outrun the lessons or the unfinished business essentially across lifetimes. I'm seeing across eons specifically. And so they only illuminate what is already present within our subconscious. These conscious organisms that we are able to work with and that actually desire to work and co-create with us within this cosmic overlay that is cast over Gaia actually becomes an access point. There are many nodal access points I'm seeing that are designed to forge us into a higher order, to forge us back into this restoration. I'm seeing project, so it could feel like this lifetime is a restoration project for you. It's to bring any kind of hidden material that has lied beneath the surface into our awareness. And this essentially creates an opportunity for integration, to integrate our life experiences, not just in this lifetime, but experiences that have occurred across many lifetimes. Every emotion that is consciously processed within our field actually becomes the very force that expands us into higher dimensional expressions of ourself. It's inseparable that doing the shadow work allows us to recover many dormant abilities and capabilities and possibilities for our own life experience. It literally allows us to connect with larger systems of life that desire to move through us as conduits. But we must accept these parts of ourselves in order to access this greater spectrum within us that desires to be felt. I'm seeing that desires to be seen, that desires to be recognized, and is seeking integration. Now, another thing that was coming up that I want to discuss, and I did a reading on this, it was actually a teaching, kind of explorative one. I think that you'll find it very, very fascinating. It was actually about 9 months ago, I believe in Egypt, that I recorded it. And I was talking about the quantum cinema. I'll probably do an updated one, but essentially it was you experiencing this third dimension as a quantum cinema. And it's like this third dimensional movie. You know, when you go to see a 3D movie, you have these holographic glasses that you put on. And our emotions become filters of perception in the way that we perceive our life experiences. And depending on the color glasses you were wearing would determine the version of the movie you watch, the version of reality that you experience. And so it's really an in-depth explorative theme, but what Spirit was showing me was the solar plexus theme. And so I'll take you through that journey now, where once we actually understand what the emotional information is that's moving through the field, we start asking ourselves the questions of, how are we interpreting reality? Because many people aren't seeing reality as it is, but instead they're seeing reality through the lens of any kind of unresolved emotional material that's lingering within their internal field. And that becomes not what animates the experience, but it's how they interpret the experience that's being animated to them. There are quite a few different versions of your life experience that you can see depending on if the solar plexus is in an underactive state, an overactive state, or is in perfect balance and perfect union. And if it's in a contracted state, what you'll notice is that you'll see reality through any kind of old stories that you've lived out when it comes to your life experiences that will reinform, I'm hearing, the present or even your future. It's where we allow the past to determine who we are or how our experiences could play out. So it's kind of tainted by these past wounds. For example, you could have experienced betrayal themes in partnerships. And so there could be someone who actually has really great intentions that comes into your life, but you'll be projecting your own past betrayals onto them. So that is like carrying the past perceptions and allowing that to dictate what it is that will, I'm hearing, become concurring is a keyword that's coming through. So let me go ahead and use that. Concurring. It could be reoccurring. Yeah, concurring is like reality saying, well, I agree with you. You've experienced betrayal. So everyone that you meet, you're going to experience these levels of betrayal. And really, that can lead to deep resentment that the human can end up harboring within themselves. And that resentment is not even towards that person. It's where we resent ourselves or where we've betrayed ourselves staying in a situation and not setting up the appropriate boundaries in a circumstance that just keep reinforcing our own disempowerment. It's where we've kept ourselves disempowered instead of being able to stand sovereign and trust the things that we're interpreting and trust the things in which we're actually picking up on. So concurring means agreeing with something or happening at the same time. I'm concurring with your opinion. I agree with your opinion. Two events were concurring. So two events happened at the same time. Yeah, so it's like reality agreeing with you and coinciding. What about reoccurring? I have to say, when we're sitting like this, it just feels like I'm having a catch-up session with you. So I love it because it's like I'm basically, it's like our own communication hub where we're inside of this time dilation bubble right now, and we're catching up on what it is that we've been experiencing within this holographic construct like the Matrix, and we're coming back and we're saying like this happened, and then we're going back out into our journey. So anyway, reoccurring means happening again and again over time. So it's something that's been reoccurring in your life, happening repeatedly over time. So that could be what someone needs to hear. But, eventually the storyline then revolves around, having to prove yourself constantly in partnerships or trying to defend yourself or fearing that something is going to fail. And so, you can fear that rejection that can happen, or you can constantly seek validation outside of yourself in order to feel worthy or in order to feel enough or in order to actually feel safe. I needed to plug this in. Okay, are we good? Yeah, so what you'll notice is that every character that will basically come into your story or begin to download into your third dimensional experience will just keep reinforcing these things back to you. And that could look like people coming in to challenge your worth, right? They're actually inviting you to begin to show up for yourself now in a way that you weren't able to do before. Every situation appears to question your value, or every obstacle that you face in life now becomes personal. But what if the experience isn't happening to you? And it's only there and showing up in your reality to reveal something within yourself. When the solar plexus becomes balanced, the storyline begins to change. You stop seeing challenges as threats. You begin seeing opportunities for growth in your life. You stop viewing yourself as the victim of your own storyline and actually begin recognizing yourself as a conscious participant within reality itself. And so the plot line becomes your arena for evolution. This is where the human begins trusting their path and they trust themselves. They stop measuring their worth through external applause or criticism and instead begin operating from this internal coherence. If you're viewing life through this contracted solar plexus, then you'll notice betrayals externally often become these mirrors asking you, where have you betrayed yourself? Are you repeating feedback loops through guilt, shame, resentment, or suffering? Or are you willing to tune into the infinite possibilities? Because the soul naturally seeks harmony in this experience. It naturally seeks out evolution. And it's often the ego that remains attached to the story, the wound, the character, or the identity. And that's why acceptance becomes the gateway into compassion that is able to emerge. It reminds me of this saying I used to say back in the day, and it was, gratitude is the river in which abundance flows from. Compassion is the river in which abundance flows from. There's something around them being interlinked because we can feel abundant in so many ways when we're able to tune into that layer of compassion, not just compassion within ourselves, but also compassion for another individual that has played a part into our story, that has actually contributed towards our growth when we're seeing it clearly, instead of taken away from it or taken anything from us. It's actually recognizing that at the soul level, every single experience that you've had on planet Earth has contributed towards your evolution. And so the question becomes, are you seeing life through the lens of separation, or are you seeing it from the crown chakra? Because the crown chakra sees everything from the lens of unity. You begin asking questions like, what was I teaching myself through another version of me? Because I am another you and you are another me. And what am I teaching you? And what did you teach me? Because that very lens will determine the reality in which you experience. We begin to see it from more of an empowered and interconnected lens, which ultimately liberates us. It gives us a liberated perspective and helps us transcend those very experiences that, if we attach to, just leaves us becoming earthbound. And it's because we are not transforming the situation or even the person. We are transforming our relationship to it, which changes our resonance to it. So important to understand. And that happens through what? The way that we're thinking about it, the way that we're feeling about it, that then impacts the way in which we experience it, or we relate to that experience, which frees the version of self that's literally running and experiencing that parallel simultaneously, that's still living under this painful perspective. And that's where another question begins to emerge, which is, where have we actually betrayed ourselves within our own life experiences? Because often the betrayals we experience externally are simply mirrors pointing towards places where we've abandoned our own truth, where we've ignored our intuition, or we've tolerated, staying in situations that simply just feel misaligned, or we've stayed in circumstances our soul has already outgrown. And so the solar plexus often reveals where we're still attached to stories that just no longer serve us, right? These are the stories that are built from shame, or they're built from guilt or suffering, or from an identity that we've molded around that circumstance or what happened to us. We see this, and I'm not gonna point any fingers or anything like that, but I don't know if you've ever seen anyone that goes to prison and then when they come out of that experience and there's a level of trauma that's still lingering in their field, they can create an identity around that. And this is where I'm using it as an analogy, because we can, when we victimize ourselves, become imprisoned, almost like locked into an identity or a version of self that we have created around a particular event or interaction in our life experience. So that would be the analogy that I use, right? Where do we kind of lock ourselves into these fixed archetypes that then block off vast portions of our potential? We can literally block ourselves off from vast portions of our infinite potential by fixating on this specific mold or this specific version of self that we're wearing that isn't the totality of our expression or the expressions of consciousness that are available for us to streamline into our experience. And so it reminds me of like a good actor, right? A good actor is one that can play many roles. A good actor is one that can become a conduit for the the storyline that's playing out or the movie in which they're experiencing within their life on Earth. I mean, I'm not going to get into it too much today, but we have this interconnected, very intelligently self-organized system. And so when we have a blockage in the solar plexus from these unprocessed emotions, that will directly impact our other chakra systems. So if we have this localized emotion that then becomes just isolated or unprocessed, that directly impacts, for example, the sacral chakra. And it's because we are harboring onto this resentment that then begins to develop simply because we're remaining in situations or circumstances or dynamics, environments, or being connected to people that we have simply outgrown. And so it talks about where we have abandoned or we are abandoning our own inner knowing, right? It's where we're abandoning our own soul in many ways. And then stagnation develops and our life force then becomes scattered or interrupted. We're not able to actually manifest or move through the situation, this system or the situation as fluidly as we are actually designed to navigate it. And then we'll notice frustration and anger and pressure and these different survival responses or reactions actually begin dominating our perception, right? That's where we will notice the block compounds itself and it kind of warps or distorts the way that we're seeing another person, where we can project so much hatred or anger towards another person, but it's only because we are deeply holding on to these, unprocessed emotions that are now clouding our filter of perception. We're no longer seeing the being through the perspective of ultimate higher truth, but instead we're projecting our own internal wars and creating a war externally. We will only seek out external wars in this system if we are holding and housing internal wars within ourselves. That's why there is no enemy if there's no enemy within. We will only seek out these external enemies in the system when we have now become an enemy to ourselves. So are we our own ally, or are we our own perpetrator? Do we become our own abuser, right? What are the conditions that we create inside of the vessel that is able to become extremely conducive for the way that the soul desires to experience? I'm hearing the narrative of the story, or a different narrative than the ego may tell. And then that leads us directly into the high priestess, where that clarity begins to emerge as we clear up these emotional distortions in how we're seeing reality. Many people have been taught to believe that love means endless tolerance for a situation, right? How much are you going to tolerate? Or that you have to sacrifice yourself or betray yourself and stay in a situation that's unaligned in order to be able to prove your compassion for a person, or how much you care about a narrative or a storyline in your life. But unconditional love does not require that self-abandonment. That love then becomes a state of awareness, simply to do what's authentic with you. Love is your ability to observe your own fears, your own internal shadow aspects, your own wounds and unconscious patterns without feeling like you have to suppress them. And from that awareness, not only do you choose what's most in alignment for yourself as a sovereign being, but also the decisions that you're making on the subjective journey that you're on, and I'm hearing embarking on, that actually contribute towards these collective timelines and the collective systems that are unfolding. Sometimes that love looks like staying in a situation. Other times that self-love may look like asserting boundaries and actually walking away. And that is not always going to look loving to what has been modeled to us through societal engineering that has been weaved through generations. We have actually been taught through the inversions of truth that keep us in deeper distortion in the system and disconnected from our own power, that love is attachment, that love is possession, that love is us having to abandon ourselves to remain inside of imbalanced exchanges that actually end up becoming very parasitic, not just to us, but also to others, right? It's where we're kind of staying in these codependent dynamics. And that is not you modeling what the Matrix teaches you that love is. You are now modeling a system really that higher civilizations utilize. And it's what humanity is still maturing into. So love is really a state of awareness. Love is a state of coherence that you have within the very system that you're immersed in. And it's being able to exchange your energy and life force once you cultivate this level of remembrance that really requires you to create from a responsible place, from a conscious place. The root sacral and solar plexus often carry deeply ingrained programs around survival and power, things like shame or anger, or where we felt abandoned. And it rules energetic exchanges that we have with the Matrix as a whole, and sometimes even needing love outside of ourselves. And so when these systems become dysregulated, then we'll see relationships begin mirroring those unresolved subconscious beliefs. And that's why discernment is different from judgment, because judgment attacks while discernment simply just observes. And the High Priestess is a character and archetype that we see modeled in tarot who actually symbolizes this. She understands this so deeply because she sees beyond appearances. She's able to recognize when somebody's words and actions and their energy is not in coherence. And it's not from this superiority of, oh, I am better than you, or from this place of ego, but it's just this quiet stillness, because she understands that beings that are going through these internal wars within themselves will seek to alleviate themselves from that pressure that they're feeling, from that discomfort that they're feeling, by trying to throw that or pass that and not take accountability onto another person, right? Those internal wars will always externalize themselves. And sometimes that comes through I'm hearing unresolved emotions will always reveal themselves in ways that may be unconscious to the one that's projecting them. They may not even be aware of them seeking to resolve their internal wars through trying to project them onto another being. This is because internal wars will always seek to externalize. It's a given. And we will recognize it in a human who is disconnected from their own divinity, who's disconnected from their own power. And so that, again, leads them on a really self-destructive path. And essentially, we'll see it modeled through their attempts to manipulate, right? They're living under inversion. So you'll see projections. You'll see them externalizing their internal anger outwardly. You'll see it modeled through their contradictions between what it is that they say and the things that they do. It will be modeled through their internal, especially emotional instability. And it's where, it's up to you. For example, if that comes in from the field and you have strong boundaries and you can say, okay, I'm sensing insecurity in your field, but I'm not going to accept that emotional display or projection to say, okay, I am insecure because you are insecure. No, I am secure, I'm safe, and I'm stable. I'm sensing that you feel unsafe and unstable right now in your being. And that is part of just conscious exchange in the system. And sometimes the best exchange is giving it no life force at all. And again, it's not to judge, because what you judge, you give power to. You'll continue to attract what it is that you judge until you no longer judge what it is that you attract. But instead, you're just able to identify what's happening in a being's field that's being re-expressed. And really, when it comes to doing your own internal shadow work, you can only recognize the shadow within another human being when you recognize it as an octave of consciousness that we also host within our avatar and the collective systems. Once you stop judging yourself internally, your entire organism, right, the whole entire human vessel is able to come back into harmony. And so it doesn't see external people going through cycles of suffering as an enemy. Instead, those are the beings that need compassion the most, because of the destructive behavior and path that leads to them becoming really their own abuser. When the human is experiencing profound levels of suffering, especially for long periods of time, it's something that when we are healed within, we are able to see that through healed eyes. And it's not pain and suffering that's for us to take on, but instead we're able to remain regulated, right? Our body is able to remain safe and secure as we're simply just reading what's happening in another human's field. And from that state, our discernment becomes increasingly refined. It literally is this really finely tuned instrument that again becomes this tuning fork to say, okay, I can locate, I can identify what's happening, I can see when your words, your energy, and your actions may be misaligned and that's causing disease, but my words, energy, and state of coherence are incredibly aligned, so I will be poised, I will be seated in my power, and there's no longer these unconscious battles that you have within yourself where you're projecting conflict out into the world in order to seek alleviation. There is nothing to alleviate yourself from because you've been able to process this within your internal world. And from that clarity, you can simply protect the integrity of your energy, your awareness, your body, your emotional state of being. So it's incredibly liberating. Liberated is the soul that can see everything as an act of love or a call for love in this system. And often when we have calls for love through these exaggerated emotions that we observe within another human's behavior, well, it's literally just telling us about I'm hearing fixed opinions that become confessions in disguise of the events that have occurred along this being's space-time travels that have led to them cultivating this really strong warped perception. And again, sometimes the soul is experiencing things through these inversions of truth, through these myopic glasses in which they're viewing their own life experiences that are going to be valuable for their journey. It's just understanding that there is a consequence to every energetic exchange, especially these unconscious attachments. They carry consequences. And so it's a very real thing around what it is that you want to entangle yourself with in this system. So the solar plexus, again, does ask us, who has access to your energy, essentially, what has access to your energy, and what kind of agreements are still active beneath your awareness. And the power is that once your awareness becomes aware of what these unconscious agreements have been, especially throughout lifetimes, you're able to free yourself up from those dynamics. And it's because you're no longer seeking to be understood by another person, you're no longer seeking to prove yourself to somebody or trying to control, the outcome or how someone sees you or perceives you in any way. But instead, you just have this deeper trust in yourself, a deeper trust in what it is that you're intuitively picking up on. And you can remain in that deep connection that you've fostered with yourself and be seated in your power. And that's the beauty of the higher expression of the solar plexus. And this is where the solar plexus starts transforming from an emotional center into more of a perceptual center, and how you're translating the energetic realm that appears to be physical. Understand the depth of what I just said, all right? This is ultimately a portal that's asking you to not control reality or not try to control this container that many frequencies coexist with them and are able to interact with each other inside of, but instead to just recognize what belongs to you inside of this container and recognize what doesn't, right? What you're in resonance with and what's in resonance with your highest alignment and expression, and what isn't. Things in this matrix, because it's a psychological operation, will compete for your attention. It will either try to pull you into dynamics that are extremely restorative and lead you into deeper coherence and connection with yourself and empower you, or into deeper conflict and separation and shame and just deep anger. And so it's really being aware that you, as a powerful being, a multidimensional being, can always constantly choose between your destructive potential in this plane or your incredible potential as a creator. And I'm hearing a curator, to curate your life experiences. This is to recognize where you're operating from fear, where you're operating from coherence, and remembering that ultimately, in the end, human evolution and harmonic order and this greater intelligence is something that moves through this system. It's a higher intelligence in which you are interconnected with and that you're inseparable from, but an expression of. And so to be seated in the stillness and observe the intricacies and complexities of the very holographic construct that you're seated inside of, and just observe it from this level of awareness, then becomes mastery in your relationship with the physical plane, because your state of awareness informs the physical plane. You've mastered your mind, you've mastered your emotions, your inner realms first, which then master your relationship with everything else in this dimension and other dimensions. This is a level of lucidity that is an ongoing state of awareness. It's a level of lucidity that then becomes responsible creation, not just within this construct, but many other constructs beyond this, far beyond this. What we begin to realize and really remember very quickly in this process is that it was never personal. And you hear me say this all the time. Well, it's not personal, it's only vibrational. Why is that? Well, emotions are frequencies that carry information. And when these frequencies are stored within our body, they don't just stay in our body. They move through our nervous system, our emotional body, our energetic body, and bleed into the wider field of the reality that we experience. And so every emotion that we resist or we suppress or is left unprocessed is then stored inside of this field, inside of this morphic field that then is the instruction manual of how these frequencies manifest into form. Are you picking up what I'm putting down, right? So literally, it's like your body holds them, right? Your subconscious holds them, the ancestral field holds them. And over time, those distortions influence how we perceive not just ourselves and others, but also how we perceive reality itself. This is why emotional processing is not simply about feeling better, but it's about returning our system to coherence. You are a fractal of the earth, and the earth is consistently processing vast ranges of frequencies beyond what we can consciously perceive, and your body is literally doing the same. Just as these larger systems move through cycles of pressure and release and transformation and reorganization, so do we. And so the planetary movements often end up acting as catalysts for this process, which is why astrology is such a useful tool. Now, astrology is actually something that is confined to this universe, we must understand, because it's a snapshot of this solar system, right? And also other fixed stars, like when we branch out off, and that's why I love working with the fixed star placements, because it's something that the matrix, it's such a layered process, okay? It's such a layered construct when we talk about the entire architecture of the universe itself. But there are so many influential, let's say, signatures that take on these archetypal forms. I mean, even the conscious organisms that are the planets that hold these very specific energetic signatures are often told through stories of these archetypes. I mean, we have Odin, who is also Thoth energy, and he's directly linked to Hermes and Mercurial type of vibes. You know, we have all these different kind of interlinked archetypes that coexist within this dimensional plane that often tell us a story about our own universe and the very construct in which we're always not just immersed in, but are interacting with itself. And so that's like a whole nother layer that we're not going to get into right now. I want this to be a message of its own, so I'm not going to do too much with this, but I do want to get a one gateway of the light activation just to close out, because I feel like that's going to seal this space. Right, you have heart chakra energy and Gaia gateway. So seeing life on earth through the lens of the heart. This is understanding that Pachamama is the mother of the universe. And it's knowing that it's not just Mother Earth, but it's also understanding the universe is one single being. Learning experiences, wisdom transmissions, and the Earth's intelligence that also moves through you. What is the Akashic Field? The Akashic Field is the interconnected database that stores a living memory of all organisms that have walked upon planet Earth, the past, present, and future simultaneously. Okay, Gaia Gateway activation talks about directly connecting with the mind and the intelligence. The Akashic Records is the memory of the Earth. It's the memory of the Earth of everything that has existed since the beginning of time, and everything that will ever exist. through the laws of space-time. For many years, ascension has been thought of as moving beyond the limitations of the body and transcending the physical realm. But in fact, it's a process of becoming present in the body, in full awareness of the spirit within, anchoring further into this grid, anchoring further into your position on planet Earth, and seeing through the illusion of separation clearly. There is no separation from the heart. Sometimes it's not our role to know how everything will unfold. When you draw this card, it's a reminder to trust the plan. The wisdom of Gaia is with you at this time, and you can enjoy the natural expansion that's taking place. You may have a tendency to go traveling and look to the stars for answers, but realize that the planet you call home has much to offer to you. You've chosen to be here, and it may not be easy to accept, especially if your current reality is a harsh one, but your current experiences are vital for your growth. The Earth herself cannot escape the challenges that she's facing at this time. Learn from her strength, learn from her yearning for a better future, and come back to her, for she's your chosen home. Again, there is a reason. It's opening yourself up to receiving a direct transmission from her. Visualize yourself sending deep roots into the center of the Earth. When you get as far as you can go, a portal will open and connect you with the matrix of Gaia's wisdom. This is the heart chakra, and it governs aspects of our heart, including relationships, what lights us up, and of course, our self-worth. What kind of quality of experiences do you actually believe you are worthy of experiencing on planet Earth, of participating in? This is what it is. Raise your frequency and see the quality of exchanges being reflected. See that octave of lessons they were able to ascend into you. The deeper you go, the higher you go. The deeper into oneself that you return, the higher dimensional layers of this reality and ecosystems you're able to access. This is where you've protected yourself from seeing the world, being able to truly see you. And the universal wisdom wants you to know that you're highly empathetic and a generous soul who has so much to give, and you're being called forth to reveal the deeper and more vulnerable aspects of your being. Divine light beings are surrounding you, holding you to encourage you to relax. All the restrictions and blockages from your heart space have now been removed. The worst is behind you and the world needs you. So I see this as your sense of self-worth, your value, the valuable being in which you are. You know, the Earth wants you to experience all it is that she has in store for you. Not limited pieces of your potential, but your full potential, the human's full potential in this realm. And to get excited about what that may look like and how it could translate into your life experiences. It kind of reminds you, before I go, it reminds me of this gene key. Who, what, and wherever you are. If you're not continuously transcending, then you're dying. What we can see is that life does indeed work this way. Millions of years ago, single-celled organisms made a quantum leap into multi-celled consciousness, which means that survival-based programming that lives within DNA must have either mutated or adjusted itself in order for the cell to be assimilated into a greater organism. So this is about you evolving into a higher version of self by transcending or alchemizing those survival-based programs that your body remembers. So however, our greatest innovation is yet to come, which is literally to relocate our brain from the cranium to the far more advanced solar plexus system. Just as the cell's true brain is in its membrane rather than its nucleus, so our true brain is through our emotional system. Like the cellular membrane, the solar plexus system determines what frequencies are allowed in and out of the body. Again, this is boundaries. This is like the cytoplasm of a cell. I'm sure if I'm going to find the cell card right here. I think it was right. It determines what goes in and out and what in the external world comes in. And this is like a gatekeeper that, you know, gets to decide. It's like a bouncer in a club. It's like, you know, this is your own party, right? In this matrix is your inner world. It's like, no, you're not really invited. There's certain frequencies that may not be invited to the party, you know, it may not be this night. So like if there's I don't know, something that comes in and you're like, ID, let's do a vibe check. Oh, you're experiencing this and this and this. Listen, that's just not the vibes tonight. That's just not the vibes. So it's like, no, it doesn't have to enter your internal world, right? That's kind of what it reminds me of. Like, it's a funny metaphor. But it talks about, yeah, so again, it's all about boundaries, right? Thus, as the individual mutates to receive higher frequencies, these frequencies unlock the higher organizing principles of collective life embedded within our DNA. It is not we who make this decision, but life itself. These codes are already waiting inside of us, threaded along those mazy pathways deep within our DNA. This is the sacred secret. Life is designed to keep on innovating. The old human, with its single-celled island mentality, has had its day, right? So that is beings that are self-starving, and they just become parasitic systems, essentially. It's just understanding that you're not helpless when it comes to the change in participating in the evolution of the earth herself. You are not a being whose power lies everywhere else externally than in here, right? You're not a victim to the planetary transitions. You're not a victim to astrology, or I guess Mercury's in retrograde, so I can't do this and this. It's like you have an entire universe linked inside of you as an infinite system. And there are just many matrix systems, again, and parasites that extend mass amounts of energy that go into kind of numbing your awareness or blinding us, or help creating a lot of belief systems that obstruct the way that we see ourselves. And our only job is to deprogram this. There are narratives in this system that we've all designed, right? We've designed this for the realm of contrast for us to essentially play in. So it's not to judge these systems, because they're doing their job and they're doing it perfectly, which is to disconnect you from your power, to make you believe that you're hopeless or powerless in some way and block you off from your full potential. But that's not a narrative that you have to accept. Everything operates from fear or love. And we can see that from larger systems, even secret societies that desire to suppress certain information. Understand that those who do not work with their own shadow cannot really discover their full creative potential or power within this construct. And so you'll find these beings working with inverted truths and really just operating under limited scopes of timelines that require them to be seated inside of behaviors like manipulation. But real creative power is returning back to harmonic order and just being able to hold space for the contrast inside of this realm. And that's why the dark side seems like they're so powerful, and they're great at, casting these illusions and these smoky mirrors and kind of putting you to sleep, like 𝓂 in the Jungle Book, right? The snake, like he's bringing him into a trance. He's hypnotizing him with these alpha brainwave states in social media, or to bring you into fear and just, again, have you disconnect from natural order and your higher power. But your only responsibility and your state of empowerment lies in reconnecting yourself back with your own divinity, and remembering yourself as a creative sovereign being, and to turn back on your creative power. So I'm going to love and leave you right there. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, do consider subscribing, especially if you made it to the end. Let me know. I would love to have you around for doing this work. It's work that's deeply admirable. And yes, so personal reading details are also down below. Also check out Unlisted if you're looking for some high quality 888 grade gemstones. I tried to do like a solar plexus kind of theme today. They actually do have a solar plexus chakra collection. If you want to check it out, they have all the chakras, zodiac signs, different kind of archetypes of this universe that you're able to work with. I also have my own collection, the Transcendent Tarot collection as well. And yes, let me know, what are these themes of the solar plexus? How did this resonate with you? Do you feel like you've experienced this within this incarnation and others? I would love to hear your stories. I always find them so fascinating and just deeply inspiring. So yes, until next time, my love. Bye.